So sweet Larry, another poet, another dear friend, giver to our vast community, is gone. We love you, Larry.
I think that Larry would be surprised, because what a humble man he was, at the tremendous impact his death had on the community. But I'm not surprised. And I'm not surprised how many people are here today, just about a full house. And there will be more memorials for him.
I think he was our poetry community's greatest impresario. The work he did with the Redondo Poets Weekly Reading. He masterly located and encouraged poets. He made a point of discovering poets of Los Angeles. Better here than anyone has heretofore. Still now, he brings our unduly divided community together, as perhaps no one else here in this room can.
Larry, really funny, unassuming, very generous of spirit, so supportive of the spoken word community. I think it's really great that, we're all out here tonight celebrating Larry and celebrating, his poetry and keeping the word alive and uplifting.
The one thing I will never forget about Larry was his selfless recognition of all these writers who showed up in Redondo Beach, no matter what degree of perfection any one of us might have reached. Larry was so generous with his attention, and it was a heartfelt thing. You could tell it was coming right from his heart. Whether they were international, renowned poets like Fred Voss or Joan Jove Smith, or some high school sophomore who might be reciting the only 3 poems he or she had ever written up to that point, he was so egalitarian, wasn't he? I mean, it's treating everybody with the same considerable kindness, the same courtesy, the same respect. So as we send Larry off on his final journey, travel well, my friend.
What I remember most about him is all his communications were about other people and showed his concern for how well they were doing. And I don't remember him saying a single thing about himself. We had a mutual friend, Takealong, who was a well-known street poet. Everyone had lost communication with her except for Larry. So I remember thinking, wow, that's really incredible, that this guy is the one that will keep in touch with her.
He invited me to Café Cartel, and it was unforgettable because I'm always very self-conscious of my accent, and I was telling him, but my accent gets in the way. And he said, don't worry, you don't have to worry. He was very kind.
Look, I wanted Larry to be on the board of trustees here, and he graciously accepted that request. And he was certainly one of the best board members that we have here. I mean, I could say a lot about him, and it's kind of, it's kind of emotional for me. I felt very close to Larry.
Some people made model airplanes, I guess. Some people had other hobbies where they made stuff, and for some reason, the seed was planted, so to speak, that I would, I'm going to make a poem. I seem to be wired for some kind of, melancholic view, or I have kind of a, what do you call it, a predisposition Other people are just happy-go-lucky all the time, and that's great. And I didn't get that card. For some reason, what I choose to put into poetry is, in a sense, to externalize this sadness, if you would. Once you express it in words, and it gives me some perspective to share it, and it just doesn't seem as significant. I hope that it's been transformed, however, into something that other people like to look at, so to speak, or a well-crafted poem. So it's the making of something that works out of it that's the reward for me. My first readers are the audience at Coffee Cartel. That's where I take new stuff. I go to the mic, I read it, I see what it feels like to read it, and I try to feel the audience respond. I consider this my foundation poem, meaning it says something upon which everything I've written has been built. At the curb, car waiting, boy standing. The blue 48 Plymouth is at the curb. The rear door open, the engine's running. All of my family is in the car. Father, mother, brothers, sister, waiting for me to get in. The house is locked. I want to be with them, but I cannot make myself move toward the open door. I do not want them to leave, but I don't know how to tell them. I stand on the sidewalk, arms at my sides, immobile, silent. The car begins to pull away, slowly, and I wake up. 40 years later, I remember what I had forgotten or never admitted about this dream. I am also in the car. Now, when hard choices pull up beside me and wait, I can't pretend I don't know what's at stake. But the boy does not forsake me. He is always waiting for me to return.
There's nothing like seeing him up there on the screen and really remembering the subtlety and that kind of, that slight, that always that combination of the self-deprecating humor and melancholy. Larry studied with us in my home workshop. I don't even remember how many years, and was one of us. And I said, okay, I have an idea. How about we all just build a poem? What's that called? It's called a collaborative poem. And I came up with the title, When Larry Left Town, because that was the first big shock. When Larry left town, I went, whoa, what are you doing over there on the other side of the country? Come back, come back. And so I will start with my part, and we will just roll right through this. When Larry left town, my cat called all day for his poems. Not her usual commonplace meow, but a call with a coyote note, a nighttime creature with insomnia at high noon note, a bluish, pinkish note, and nothing would appease her, not even Frisky's whitefish and tuna fillets.
When Larry left town, every marionette sagged on its strings, followed his lanky gait with painted eyes, wooden thighs. It's okay, he winked, and uttered some lines that lifted their knees and wrists, clattered their limbs, and with his breezy essay, transported.
When Larry Coker left town, was it fate or chance, this relocation, this alteration in the space-time continuum? Back in my own, I watched the ghosts of his youth dance in jerky simulacrum to the staccato chattering of the family projector, images in light, neither time nor space can erase.
When Larry left town, I was on jury duty. Larry would have liked all the people who brought books, silenced their phones, opened doors for each other. When we stood, the judge asked, "Can you be fair and impartial?" I said, "Not today, Your Honor. I'm just not feeling it. Swear to God."
When Larry left town, I congregated alone in the middle of the street outside Suzanne's place like we used to do, in the cool poetry night air, where instead of farewells, we'd made a ritual of repeating the workshop's winning phrases, unable or just unwilling to stop constructing and deconstructing a stack of words we would treat with the reverence of monuments, and cultivating what Larry celebrated, the triumph of a strong distaff voice.
When Larry left town, we were down a prophet who could alert us to bursts of glory, revelation, the exuberance of that girl in the leap. I remained converted, waiting for a return of that rapturous rush, grateful for his quickening the girl I still carry, am.
So Sharon Venezio couldn't be here. When Larry left town, the LA sky grew quiet. Birds followed him onto the crowded highway, across the desert, through the great plains, navigating by the sound of his poems, words dancing through the air like tumbleweeds. Back in our quiet skied city, we recite amnesia and wings. Thank the winking stars that beat white against the night.
And this is from Jessica Goodheart. When Larry left town, I headed to the Natural History Museum's Butterfly Pavilion and looked for his poems. Among the amnesiac buckeyes, monarchs, and swallowtails, their noxious colors hinted at his wild imaginings, their zigs and zags at his surprise moves on the page, from wit to sorrow, from joy to longing, and one gray cracker in a mottled cloak, blended with tree bark, flat-winged and ever watchful.
When Larry left town, waitresses stalled out on the 405 and howled, coffee pouring from their hoods. As drivers inched past, each of them felt a little less seen. But Doris wasn't driving. She steered customers away from the back booth, where Larry's poems gathered to chat. She'd be sure to top off their cups and idle with them just a while.
This room feels deserted to me without Larry in it. And I would like to say a lot about what he was to me, but if I try to speak off the cuff, I'm going to start crying hysterically. So I wrote him a letter, and I'm going to read it. I remember the sound of taps echoing up the streets of San Pedro at 9 p.m. as we sat in my backyard, as your fine hair shifted itself from white to blue, as we drank cider as you smoked a joint, me with feathers in my hair and my half-naked baby on my lap, you with a plastic bag on your head and my stinky old deaf cat on yours, laughing and laughing. I remember drinking alcoholic grog from moose cups on Christmas, you in that ridiculous elf hat and Mickey Mouse t-shirt my mother insisted you wear, and thinking, gosh, Larry, you really can make anything look classy. As we talked child development, as you swooped a screaming Lily into your arms as she fell quiet, slipping your glasses off your face, as you smiled and held tight to the thing that neither of us thought would ever exist. I remember you forever lifting me from my suffering, driving an hour and a half down to San Pedro just to steal Lily away to the park or the movies or the beach so I might have a moment to try to collect myself, to suffer in peace. Hours later, you would return, happy, tired child in your arms, dinner, pull me into a big hug and a wave of clean compassion. I remember wanting to take her here or there. I remember you shuttling us around, running after her at the aquarium or the zoo or the amusement park in the moments when I had no energy left in me. I remember you creating joy that I could not possibly create myself. I remember watching you cannonball your body into my mother's pool at Easter, hurl balls at my too-high basketball hoop on Father's Day, launch yourself around the bounce house at 11 p.m. with Lily long after her birthday party was over. She in her kitty cat pajamas, mess of hair, chocolate smudged across her forehead, you with your glasses off, black-socked feet. I remember Lily propelling herself into your arms again and again and again as you laughed, fell down, as she threw her little body on top of you, kissed your face from forehead to cheek and chin and back again. I remember your struggle to button a button, open a jar, tie your shoe, zip your sweater. I remember the amusement in your eyes when I would take over saying, for God's sakes, let me do something for you. When you came, I never wanted you to leave. When you were away, I always wanted you to come back. Over the years, I would wonder as to why such a brilliant, creative, and compassionate human being would choose such a flawed, broken, and utterly stupid thing to love, just to be met with silence or a shrug or a flicker of frustration. But hopefully you knew at least that I considered myself to be the fortunate one. I remember your recurrent dreaming, soaring over the vast labyrinth of cities in search of something that was ever draped in fog in your mind, and the freedom you said of flying, and the okayness you said of the not knowing what exactly it was that you were looking for. Larry, you always told me that you felt death was like the flick of a switch. You were here and then you were gone. I still choose to stake my faith in physics, in the essential property of energy. So today, as I make my way through within this incredible absence of you, I will see you in the smile of the child who you taught me how to mother with loving kindness. I will see you in the small sprout pushing its way up through the black, in the shifting of a cloud. I will see you in the surf of a hummingbird wing, the ripple of water dancing the cha-cha on the surface of my mother's pool, following the sip of a dragonfly. I will see you in the dragonfly in the wing. I will see you in the words that you have left behind, in the love that still fills me, in the scar, in the song of taps echoing through the streets of San Pedro at 9 p.m. And I will see you flying, in the wherever you are, in the wherever you might be, held within the heart of the peaceful thing, in the okayness of the afterness, and always, always with wings.
When we did the group poems, as we generated them, they went back and forth. They went to everybody. And I read Cece's poem, as only Cece can do. And I emailed her right back. I said, oh, Cece, this is so you. And she sparked back at me. She said, that's what Larry said. That's what he would say on my poems. And then she said something to me that was exactly what Larry had said to me. I tell you this so that you have a sense of how the prism that is Larry Colker cast its light pure and clear, and we all carry a piece of him. Thank you.
So one night I walked into Coffee Cartel, and he said, is Suzanne with you? And I said, no, I'm here to see her. She was going to be a feature that night. And he said, well, she's not here. And I said, oh, well, I'm sure she's coming. And he said, do you have her number? And I said, yeah. So I called you.
Where was I?
You were home.
What?
You were home. You thought it was a different week. So I hung up and I told him, Larry, what happened. And Larry said, we're going to have a Suzanne Lummis feature. And I said, okay. And he said, and you and I are going to do it. So he said, you're going to go on the internet on your phone, and I'm going to, go through my thing, and we're going to find poems to present a Suzanne Lummis feature. And don't you know that we did?
Wow.
He could have had an open mic, an all open mic, but he was determined to have a Suzanne Lummis feature. And this was so emblematic of Larry. He was really, just as Ed Rosenthal said, he was all Catholic with a small c, inclusive of everybody, and always about, the show must go on, and I'm going to root for you, and we're going to have a Suzanne Lummis feature.
When I moved to Los Angeles, he gave me my first feature. And I always had a good place in my heart for him for that, because of the kindness that he showed me just upon first meeting me. And something I believe most of us, a lot of us, hopefully realize as the years go by and the hair goes from brown to gray to white, and all that time passes, we come to realize that it's not really about the money we make, the possessions we own. We're not going to be remembered for that. But it's going to be about the community that we build. It's going to be about those acts of kindness. And if we're lucky, they may remember a poem or two. And what I feel from this room tonight and from everything that I've heard is that Larry did it right. And so he was very fortunate to be able to live that life. He chased his dream, and so few of us do get to do that. So he was very lucky in that sense, and we're lucky ourselves for being a part of that. Because nothing's more difficult than chasing your dream.
In my office at work, I've got hundreds of books, and yet when I thought, I've got to go to this memorial, where's Larry's book? It was amazing. I just turned around, and at eye level, there it was. It took me 3 seconds to find Larry's book, and I think it's because it sort of has this light that shines out of it, the way that he talked about that light that came from that young woman and young man who are embracing. This afternoon, when I was reading the poems again in this book, I read The Leap, and I distinctly heard Larry's voice say a line to me that went with the poem. And it was a really terrific line. And I thought, yes, he's still writing poetry and sharing it with us. It was really an incredible gift, the kind of gift he gave all of us, all of his life.
But then I saw him everywhere. I saw him reading downtown. I saw him in Arcadia. I saw him in Redondo Beach, and he just was everywhere. And so I felt like, after a while we greet each other warmly because we knew each other. And no one's mentioned this yet. He and Jim Doane put together 20 years of Redondo poets at the Carpet Cartel, 1998 to 2017. Many of you are in this group, I know. And I'm in this. I was thrilled to be asked to be in it. And you know what? He's not in it. I know. Which is really surprising.
My favorite reading of Larry's was at the Poetry Circus. I don't know how many of you have been. Some of you have featured there. I brought along one of Larry's trading cards. I don't know if you've seen these before, but when Nikel Davis puts these together, most years she puts together a card, and this is Larry's face, and one of his poems.
Well, I really think tonight we've established that Larry Colker is the gateway drug to great poetry. I think for over 20 years, there were a generation, several generations of people who heard his words, who, whether at the cartel or through workshops, and kind of felt the spirit of what creativity of poetry, of what this community could bring. And I think he really was and still is the embodiment of, the best of the spirit of, what everyone brings to, a mic, to a page, when they sit down by themselves to write something out. So I'd like to think there's just thousands of students who maybe never wrote another poem, but they heard him, Redondo or some other reading, and that they had a sense of, what acceptance and what creativity could bring to their heart, and whether they never wrote again, that they came away with something that hopefully impacted a generation of people. I know, at least I'll speak for myself, and perhaps for one or two people here, that it was an honor to know Larry, and it was an honor to have him in my heart. So, thanks.
We just literally 2 hours before I came here published a new feature of ekphrastic poetry. Poetry that, in this case, describes a painting. And our Karin put out a call for submissions, and the very first poem we got, and was wildly, enthusiastically accepted, was a poem by Larry. And as I said, 2 hours ago it went online. We did it so fast to be able to get it up for tonight so that you can go home and read Larry's poem.
Thank you, everybody, for representing Larry in so many different ways. And this will not be the end of it. I think that he will continue to be memorialized around LA directly and indirectly for years to come. And thank you. Thank you, Quentin, and thank you, Richard, for hosting. And for Elena for giving us the impetus to gather together. Thank you.